Today, I'm joined by David Lyons to talk to us about health, fitness, nutrition, and mental fitness in MS. David Lyons is a bodybuilder with multiple sclerosis who's had a tremendous career. He's written multiple books. He has the website, the MS Fitness Challenge, which has some great free resources. Definitely check out the link below. He even received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Thank you, David, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, Doc.
So let's start off with this. Tell us a little bit about your background as a bodybuilder and what was it like to start getting symptoms of MS?
Well, my background goes way back into fitness from when I was a kid. I wasn't always a bodybuilder. In fact, I was into martial arts. I was a black belt in martial arts, and I was a boxer, and I wanted to become a professional fighter. And they found in my early 20s, when I was going for my license to be a professional fighter, they saw what they said was a blood clot, and they would not give me a license. And they said, you cannot fight. Well, we find out now that that was not a blood clot. That was probably one of the beginning stages of MS and was most likely a lesion. But they didn't have the knowledge that they have now. So what happened is I had to kind of reinvent what is it that I'm going to do. I was a fighter, and this is the direction I was going. What sport kind of mimics that type of one-person sport? And that was bodybuilding for me, because I didn't want to get into team sports. I like to do something that I was in charge of, that I controlled the outcome. So I went into bodybuilding early in my 20s, and I made that shift. And I, competed briefly, but I got more into the gym business, and I started owning gyms. I ended up owning through my lifetime 8 different gyms. And that was the road that I took. So bodybuilding was kind of an afterthought for me. But once I got the taste of going to the gym and getting bigger, and I was 147 pounds as a boxer, and I got up to 230 pounds as a bodybuilder. So it was a big difference between how big I was, from one sport to the next. And I got really hooked with it. And I became friends with some of the top competitors in that day. Guys like Tom Terwilliger, who was Mr. America, guys like John Defenders, Mr. USA. I trained in the gyms with Lou Ferrigno, who everybody knows. So that was my life as a bodybuilder, more in the gym business than as a competitor.
Yeah, so, I don't know too much about bodybuilding and owning gyms. I know you received like a Lifetime Achievement Award, and you received an award from Lou Ferrigno. Tell us a little bit about some of your achievements on that side of it before and then even after getting diagnosed with MS.
Well, really, most of my achievements were after MS when it came to, the accolades that I was getting as a bodybuilder. I was just a bodybuilder. I was not at the high level of the Mr. Americas back in the day. I was a big guy. But again, to be a competitor, you have to really devote 24/7 every day. You have to get up and do this. And I was running gyms, so I didn't have that time. So I just went to the gym, lifted a lot of weights, got really big, and enjoyed it. The awards that I got, like the Lifetime Achievement Award from Arnold, I got that in 2015 for my work as a bodybuilder for MS and with MS. The awards that I got with Lou Ferrigno was the same. And I've won, all different types of fitness awards and things like that for what I've done with MS as a bodybuilder.
So it's got to be a very difficult thing, like particularly someone who's in great shape, who runs gyms, who has a certain image. I know you started getting symptoms of paralysis in your leg. Is that right? How did that come about?
Well, really what happened is I was perfectly healthy, or so I thought. We all know now that I probably had MS for almost 20 years before I was diagnosed. But I was working out in the gym. I was 47 at the time. And I was feeling great. And all of a sudden, I started feeling like a pain in my left arm. And then my arm started to go numb, and it radiated down and then into my chest. I thought, maybe I'm having a heart attack. And then I really dismissed that because I didn't feel bad. I just felt pain and numbness in the arm. So I kept working out and, kind of ignored it. And as weeks went by, it just started to get worse and spread everywhere. I literally ignored these symptoms for 2 months, and I was on an airplane. I was in the television business at the time. I still am, but back then I was deep in doing television production and film production. And I was living in Florida, and I had flown to LA for a meeting. And on the way back, I was really paralyzed from the chest down. I was sitting on the airplane realizing that I could not feel my legs anymore. And I had to be helped off the airplane. And when I got home, they realized that something is seriously wrong, rushed me to the hospital, but they sent me to a cancer hospital because they thought there's a possibility that I had a tumor in my brain or something like that. Then they thought it was brain cancer, and they're ready to do an operation. And luckily, there was a really great neurologist at the hospital. And he said, whoa, before we start cutting this guy's head open, because I wouldn't let him do it anyway. I said, you're not cutting my head open. They started running those tests. They did the MRIs, they did the spinal tap, they did everything they needed. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and they said to me, you've got MS. And I didn't even know what MS was, doc. They said MS to me, and I thought muscular dystrophy. I didn't even know what those letters meant. And they explained it to me, and the doctor said, Dave, I hate to tell you, but you have a lot of damage here. Your whole left side is in trouble. You've damaged the nerves because you didn't come in and you didn't get the solomedrol doses that you needed quickly enough, that there's a lot of damage here. You've got about 6 months before you're going to be in a wheelchair. And, that's the prognosis I had to deal with when I left that hospital. So it was a pretty big blow in the face. I tell people, as a fighter, it was kind of like getting punched in the face when I wasn't looking for it and it just hit me.
So, obviously you learned a lot through experience, through your own experience. What did you learn about fitness and MS? How is it different from, say, someone without MS?
Well, that's a long story, and I'll try to make it as short as possible. When I got home, I went on the internet and I started looking at everything. And I'm a pretty positive person. I mean, I was a champion in everything that I undertook as far as an athlete. So I said, I'm not going to let this disease get me. I'm going to beat this disease. But I didn't understand how I was going to do it. Started looking on the internet, and everything that I saw was very negative. I mean, most doctors, 15 years ago were telling people, go home and rest. Don't exercise. There were a few that were probably for exercise, but I couldn't find any. And I found a lot of groups on the internet with a lot of negativity, how their life was over and, MS is killing them and all these type of things. So I started to kind of feel that, you start thinking, well, maybe these people are right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I can't beat this thing. And it took me about a year or so to get a different attitude. So I went from about 200 pounds of muscle to about 160 pounds of nothing. I mean, I had no muscle left. I was tired. I couldn't move. My friends who were bodybuilders kept telling me, go to the gym. And I said, no, I'm not going to go to the gym. It's embarrassing. I can't even feel my fingers. I can't bend my hand. How am I going to work out? Finally, after that year or so, one day I looked in the mirror and I said, you know what? I'm a champion. I'm going to beat this disease, and I'm going to do it in the gym. But I didn't know the direction. So I went to the gym and I started bodybuilding, just bodybuilding like I always did. And I got stronger and I got bigger. I went from 160 to about 185 in a couple months. And I said, you know what? I could compete in a bodybuilding competition, even with MS. Now, nobody was doing that back then. So I'm heading towards my 50th birthday. I'm in my late 40s, was diagnosed at 47. So I'm almost 49 now, I'm 48 and a half. And I said, okay, I'm going to train to be in a bodybuilding competition. And I did that. And there's a trophy up there, which you can't see, but I got a nice big trophy. I stood on stage against 150 healthy athletes. I was the only one with MS. I didn't compete in the disabled division. I did this in a regular division, and I got a standing ovation. It was really nice. And And my wife said, this is great, Dave. It's fantastic. You just got a nice trophy and everybody's looking at you on the internet, but really think about, what are you doing to help anyone with MS? Maybe that's some inspiration to a few people, but what are you really doing? Are you teaching anyone anything about fitness for MS? And that's when we started the MS Fitness Challenge. But I really didn't understand the difference between exercise for MS and exercise in general. And I realized that even though I'd won this trophy, I got up on stage, I still was dragging my left leg. I still couldn't squeeze my fingers. I still was a mess when it came to MS. So there was something I was doing wrong. And as someone who likes to understand things, and someone at that time had been in fitness for over 25 years, I said, let me start really diving in to the brain, to the nervous system, to how everything is really connected in our body. And I started finding studies on athletes, because I couldn't find anything about MS. There was no real studies with any type of exercise for people with MS. So I just studied the complete body, and I figured out that there were three things that were extremely important for us with MS. So I went back into the gym. I said, you know what? I could still be a bodybuilder, but I am going to apply some of these principles that I'm reading about to help my MS. And I started to do that. And over time, I went from not being able to squeeze my fingers to being able to do this, to be able to do this, to do whatever I needed to do. My legs started to lift up and down. My drop foot started to go away. And I realized that what I was doing was working. So I developed these training methods, which now I call the optimal body training methods. And I applied them all to myself for about a year and a half. And then I was fine. I was jumping rope. I was running on a treadmill. I was doing all sorts of things. And that's how I figured out what it is that you need to do for exercise with MS that's very different than just going to the gym and exercising. I also found out that what I was seeing on YouTube for exercise for MS was not really working. It was not creating the processes that I know need to happen. They were not giving you long-term benefits. So I shifted everything into this type of training, and we could go into what those processes are after you tell me what you want to, which direction you want to go. But there's a lot involved here, and it's not just going to the gym and exercising.
Okay. You touched on it a little bit, and we can get into the nitty gritty of the details, but, I know mental fitness is a big thing for you, and you're into storyboarding and visualization. And obviously that was very important to you right when you got started, because you were shocked by the diagnosis and everything. And a lot of people with MS go through that at some point. What are some tips you would give to someone who needs help with the mental aspect of it?
Well, the first thing is that there are keys to fitness. So those keys are exercise, nutrition, mindset, and then maybe alternative treatments. If you're on medication, that's great, but there's also other things that you can do as well. But the mental part of it, so that key, mental fitness, is number one, because you will never follow through with a diet. You will never follow through with exercise. You will never even take care of yourself the way you should unless you're mentally prepared to do so. So, when I got home from the hospital, I wasn't mentally prepared. There was no mental fitness for me. I went home, I said, I'm going to beat this disease, and then I got lost. Well, if you have a game plan, you will not get lost. So you have to first look in the mirror, and you have to say to yourself, I am not going to let a disease tell me what my life is going to be like. I dictate my life. If you cannot tell yourself that you are the controller of your day-to-day, then you have no mental fitness. Then nothing else will fall into place. And that doesn't mean that you have no symptoms. That doesn't mean you're not struggling. That doesn't mean you don't have relapses. That doesn't mean you don't see your doctor. But what it means is that you have to look at yourself and say, I am going to fight this thing, and I'm going to do what I have to do every single day. Once you get that mindset and you've got mental fitness, then you can have a game plan. The game plan will be to properly exercise, to eat well, so you stop eating junk food and sugar and all the terrible things that are inflammatory. And you do what your doctor tells you to do. If your doctor has you on medication, then that's the road you take. If you go down different alternative means, then you go down that road. But you have to have a path. And if you have a path and you've got your mind in the right place, you could overcome what you're dealing with. Again, no cures. So we're not saying there's a cure to this. We're not saying that you won't have issues or you won't have bumps in the road, but you'll be able to deal with those bumps a heck of a lot better if you have a game plan and your mind is in the right place.
That makes a lot of sense. You need that internal motivation. So to switch gears a little bit to nutrition, I know some of the advice you give is a little bit personalized. Maybe some of it's inspired by the Best Bet diet, which is promoted by Ashton and Matt Embry and Judy Graham. And I do have a video on her book and a summary of that diet. Can you tell us a little bit about what diet you try to eat and what you recommend to people?
Yeah, look, I know Dr. Walls. She's a friend. She actually endorses and supports what I do. So I know the Walls protocol well. Ashton and Matt Embry are friends of mine, and I know the Best Bet diet very well. My whole philosophy on dieting, and I do follow the Best Bet pretty closely, but I also believe that we're each individuals. We want to keep our bodies as anti-inflammatory as possible. What does that mean for me and for you? Could be two different things. There are people that cannot eat grains whatsoever because it gets their bodies inflamed. I'm not one of them. I've taken grains out. I've taken rice out of my meals for months, put it back in, did not have any difference. But if I eat ice cream or I have any dairy products, I immediately feel that inflammation. I don't feel well. My fingers get tight. So I know that that's an inflammatory food for me. So what I tell people to do diet-wise is pick a diet that you feel is going to work for you, that you can actually follow. If it's too extreme and you're not willing to eat liver and brains and heart and things like that, then don't go down the Walls protocol. If you're willing to be more paleo and you want to be a little bit less extreme, the Best Bet diet is the type of diet that you want to be on. But also test things. Use yourself as a guinea pig like I did. Take things out, put things back in. Find out for yourself what's inflammatory and what's not. And there are blood tests that you can take for that as well if you want to go to that extreme. But I love the Best Bet diet because I feel that it is a very highly anti-inflammatory diet. I think that it works well for most people with MS, but you've got to make things specific for yourself and you've got to customize everything.
Okay. Now, in terms of customization, I'm sure, exercises people could do vary a lot based on their symptoms and limitations, but could you just give me an example, like what are a few types of exercises that could be helpful to people with MS and maybe a few scenarios where you could modify exercise for someone who has, say, some mobility limitations?
Sure. Here's the thing with exercise. So there's three things that have to be created in the body for an exercise program to be effective for MS. One is you have to create muscle fiber activation. Now, how do you create muscle fiber activation? Well, you create a higher level of acetylcholine, which is a chemical in the brain that moves muscles. Without acetylcholine, your muscles are not moving. So people with MS typically have a very low level. Athletes have a high level and they keep that level high. Their muscles move more efficiently. So you've got to create this acetylcholine muscle fiber activation type of process going. And when your muscles fibers are activated, you now become anabolic. So people think anabolic and they think of steroids and, the drugs that bodybuilders and athletes take. But the word anabolic is muscle growing and muscle strengthening, has nothing to do with taking drugs. It's just a word. So you want your body to be anabolic because if your body is catabolic, which a lot of times it is when you have a disease like MS, your muscles are being eaten away. You become muscle wasting. So you want to go in the other direction. So that's number one, and it's very important. Number two is you have to get your brain reconnected to those muscles that are no longer working well. Now, how do you do that? Well, if you focus your thoughts when you train and when you exercise specifically on what you're doing, there are scientific studies with athletes that prove that the thought process that you have while you're exercising will create a connection from the brain to the muscles. So what we're trying to do is go around the damaged nerves, forget about them, and utilize our brain to give us the ability to do this, okay? I don't feel this hand, so there's no feeling in here, which means that my nerves are not working in this hand. Yet I could still do this and I could still do this, but I couldn't do that 15 years ago. I trained my hand to be able to do that through the thought process and the exercise that I do that creates that thought process. That's number two. And the third thing is, which everybody kind of knows this word, neuroplasticity. We want to try to get the nerves that are working to be redirected and create new pathways to the parts that aren't working. Forget about the nerves that are not working, get rid of them, just delete them and make new pathways with nerves. Now, you know this, that's a difficult scenario. It can happen. Will it happen for everybody? Maybe not. But the two things that will happen is, number one, you can create a higher level of muscle fiber activation, and you can focus enough to get your brain to tell your muscles to do something. So what I do with my training is it's not exercises themselves. It's training methods that I created that enable you to do those three processes and make them happen. So for instance, if I've got someone in a wheelchair that comes to me or is in one of my programs, I am not having them get up and down out of the wheelchair and doing squats. I have them doing things in the wheelchair that will have them focusing or actually hyper-focusing on the movement of those legs. And eventually those legs start to move, and it's pretty amazing. I've got thousands of testimonials and hundreds upon hundreds of video of people doing what I tell them to do through the Optimal Body program, where they have come in, they could not lift their foot off the ground, and then months later, their knees are lifting pretty high off the ground, and some of them are out of their wheelchairs. Now, again, we're not curing anything, so I don't want anybody to think I'm here claiming I have a cure for MS, because I don't. If I did, I wouldn't be on the show. I'd be in an island that I own somewhere. But, you know, at the end of the day, there are ways of training and exercising that have nothing to do with doing foot drop exercises or doing knee lifts or hip bridges. It's how you train, not the exercises that you do, that make the difference.
All right, thank you for that. Just in terms of a few troubleshooting issues, a lot of my patients are very heat sensitive. It's summer in Southern California where I am, and they may be able to exercise okay, but they're just like very sensitive to the heat. And another common complaint is people get a lot of fatigue with exercise, like motor fatigue. So maybe they could cycle on a stationary bike, but after 5 minutes, they're dead. And if they kind of go too hard, then they're dead the rest of the day and they can't achieve anything practical. How do you sort of balance that? What advice do you give to people in terms of staying cool and energy conservation, that sort of thing?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, I wear a cooling vest, okay? But I wear one, and I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want to sound like I'm selling a cooling vest, but there's a specific type that I use that's very thin and it works and it cools my lower back, gets my whole body nice and cool. So that's one thing. If you don't have a cooling vest, you don't want to buy a cooling vest, you take a towel, make it wet, put it in the freezer, stick it around your neck. You should always keep your body temperature as low as you can while you're exercising, which will help with the fatigue, will help with that feeling of I can't go on anymore, and that overheating that we get, or that almost like itchy feeling that we get when we start overheating. That helps to eliminate that. But also the way that I train through my programs are shorter, intense training. So what we're doing is we're training for a shorter period of time, forcing the muscles to listen in a shorter period of time so that you're not so exhausted for the rest of the day, and that you could go on and do the things that you need to do. I find that programs that go more than 30 minutes really with MS start becoming too long for people with MS. You don't need to exercise that long if what you're doing is correct. It's focusing on the things that I discussed, and your intensity is there during that short period of time. Intensity and focus, two of the most important things, not duration of time that you spend. If you use that, you take your cooling apparatus or whatever it is that you're doing, you truncate that workout, stay more hyper-focused on it, that will help you. And we also find that if you train the way that I'm training, you do actually generate more energy. I find that most of the people that follow my program will tell me, wow, Dave, I have more energy. I don't understand this, but I'm working out harder in a short period of time, yet I feel stronger and I feel able to do things later in the day that I couldn't do when I was following X, Y, and Z program, and I was just doing leg lifts and squats and things like that. So we can generate our own energy by the way we train as well.
Exercise is definitely one of the proven treatments of MS fatigue for sure. So I know you're a bodybuilder and a lot of your work is in terms of strength training. Do you recommend like separate cardiovascular fitness, or do you kind of incorporate it into strength training? And is there like a particular form of cardio exercise you recommend?
So the way that I train, because it's a short duration and it's very quick, we rest very, very short periods of time. I was just training somebody this morning and she said, wow, my heart rate's at 120, and all I'm doing is strength training. If you strength train correctly, you can elevate that heart rate. You can get your metabolic rate going. So not only is it good for your heart to train quickly with strength training, but it's also good for burning calories and keeping your body fat lower. So I don't particularly believe that you have to cardio train. I don't believe that you have to run on a treadmill or you have to go on a bike. Not saying that you shouldn't do it if you want to do it. If that's something you want to do, great. But what happens with people with cardio is they kind of overdo it. And they try to do these marathon cardio workouts. And basically, and this is another thing that is scientifically proven, if you train cardio just too much, you're actually eating away muscle. There's a point where you start burning your muscle if you're doing too much cardio. So there's got to be a balance. So if you're going to walk on a treadmill or you're going to ride a bike, do it in shorter spurts. You don't have to do these marathon cardio workouts. And as you know, as a doctor, the key is getting the heart rate up, and you can do that at intervals. You don't have to do it. And it doesn't have to be, like up here forever. It can be up here and then down and then up and then down. As long as you're creating that metabolic increase and you're creating that heart rate increase, you've got a cardio workout.
Yeah, I mean, high intensity interval training is definitely super popular in general. And I guess it makes sense to just be efficient with your time. It's hard to schedule separate time for like resistance training and cardio.
Yeah, especially with MS.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's hard to cover everything, but do you have any other general advice for people with MS trying to stay fit?
Yeah. I mean, look, the biggest advice that I could give anyone with MS is to do something. Okay. Don't just say, I've got MS, I'm too tired, and just lay on the couch and eat junk food. That is not going to get you anywhere. I always tell people, if you don't do something healthy and you do, which direction are you going to go? So if you do something healthy, you're going to go in a direction that's going to get you feeling better. If you don't, you're never going to feel better. So you have to make that decision. I'm going to do something. Okay. Then you've got to exercise properly. Don't just jump into something you see on YouTube because some guy says he's an expert at something. And look, I'm not the only person with MS that's a fitness trainer, but I'm the only person with MS that's a fitness trainer that has over 40 years experience. I'm the only person with MS that's a fitness trainer that has multiple awards, that it was just voted to the top 100 healthcare leaders in the world. I know what I'm doing. So you want to find someone who has the knowledge of training with MS, that lives this disease, that understands what it feels like. If you tell me that you've got a pain in your arm, but you're numb, I understand what that means. Someone that does not have this disease, they say, what do you mean you have a pain and you're numb? How can you have a pain if you're numb? So, there's really a very good argument to working with someone who has the disease, but someone that has enough experience and understands how to get those processes that you need activated in your body. You've got to train properly. You've got to eat for an anti-inflammatory diet. You have to have the right mindset, and you have to go to good doctors like you that know what they're doing and will listen to you and will work with you. Don't just take what a doctor says and run with it. Work with a doctor that is going to hear you and understand what you're saying and take the time to say, hey, let's put you on a management protocol that includes proper nutrition, includes exercise, includes what you think, and includes the medication or the process that I'm telling you to go down medically that makes sense for you. That's what's important. Have a game plan and a management protocol.
Well, thanks again for taking the time. I appreciate your expertise. Again, I have some links below if you want to check out David's book or his website, the MS Fitness Challenge. There's some great free resources there. I know it's been a brutal year. A lot of us have gained the COVID-19, but it's never too late to get back in shape. Take care.
Thanks for having me.